Hi, welcome to this episode of What I Call Geography. Today we're going to look at brownfield sites and greenfield sites. Before we start this, we're going to look at the development of a city, something called the Burgess model, the Burgess idea, how cities develop. Now, in the very centre of cities, we'd have the CBD, the Central Business District. That's where the shops and offices are. Outside of that, in the 1800s and 1900s in the UK, often factories and industries would develop. So here we can see in Stoke-on-Trent that would be the pottery industry. Outside of that, there'd be a zone of terraced houses. Now those would be areas where the workers who worked in the factories would live. And they wouldn't be far from the factories because of course at that point there'd be no cars. Then we have a zone of semi-detached houses. Now they've got to be built on the outside of the city at that point because the inside of the city is already taken up by space with factories and also terraced houses. So those will be built in the 1930s. And later on in the 1970s, 1980s and onwards, detached houses will be built again on the outside of the city when the city gets bigger. People want a little bit more space with parking, maybe garages. At the edge of the city is where the countryside meets the city. So you can see in Trentham we have the rural urban fringe, so not far away from Trentham is the rural or countryside area. And the rural urban fringe is where the city meets the countryside. So on the left-hand image, you can see the edge of a city, and you can see that's where it meets the countryside. In every city, there's going to be a place like that, where the city meets the countryside. That's called the rural urban fringe. We've got a summary here, so if you want to see those again, just click on this and press pause. So we've got the CBD in the centre. We've got the factories on the outside. We've got the workers' houses when the factories were built outside of that, so not far away, so workers could walk there. We've got semi-detached houses, 1930s, detached houses, and also on the edge we've got the rural urban fringe. Now it's important to study the Burgess model to look at this next thing about the question is, where do we build the next set of houses? We've got a question because some of the space is already taken up. One of the options is to build houses on the old factory sites. So we're aware in the UK there's lots of factories that have now closed down, and some of those sites have become derelict and overgrown, so we could reuse that land. Now that's good because we could reuse the land, it's near to existing services, so that's great. The negative is often it's costly to develop, and maybe there's waste materials from the old factories, old industries in the ground that need to be cleaned up. Or we could build the houses in the rural area at the rural urban fringe, the edge of the city. Now, the positive for that is maybe a pleasant living environment, maybe it's cheap, but the negative of that is damage to habitats and wildlife, loss of farmland, and also maybe people have to travel further to work. Now, the old factory sites are called brownfield sites, and the rural sites are called greenfield sites, and both of those have got positives and negatives to them.